Hey everyone, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Sharp Sharp, a new weekly podcast on the political economy of South Africa and the fascinating events happening there. I am Rob Rose from Currency News and the Financial Mail Group, and each week it's going to be me and Zukile Majova speaking about what's going on in the country. Zooks, great to have you here. It's going to be fabulous.
Yeah, as you already said, Rob, I'm Zukile Majova. I do politics on Scrolla, and you sometimes catch me on Metro FM, you catch me on Alex FM and various community radio stations in KZN and the Eastern Cape. What an interesting week, Rob.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I mean, you talked a lot in your podcast, your column this week about the ANC and what's happening with I suppose, the fact that we've had a party under siege and why the president isn't making decisions. But I suppose just to start off with the fact that we've had a momentous week with the fuel price going up so much. I mean, the fuel price was inevitably going to go through the roof because of the war in Iran and Donald Trump's forays into his ill-fated and silly forays into Iran. But we had a major event yesterday when the Department of Minerals and Energy decided to cut the fuel price levy by R3 a litre. I mean, that's a major event, right?
Exactly. You know, I was in Mount Frere yesterday, coming up to Joburg in the evening. We probably lost about 2 hours of our time because in every town we were getting in from Mount Frere, you couldn't get in. People were trying to fill up, they blocked the roads to Kokstead. It was just mad. Mzimkulu. It cost us a lot of time. That last minute fill up, good Lord, at midnight, diesel went up to 28 Rand 85.
That's massive.
I can't believe it. You know, a lot of people had actually changed from fuel to diesel, from petrol to diesel, because diesel is cheaper. A lot of people have got diesel buckets now, especially in the villages. Now, to hit people like that hard, because you tend to think that diesel is used by commercial guys. Actually, a lot of homes use diesel now. It's going to be tough.
So, I mean, it's going to cost the economy about 6 billion Rand for this month. It's a month-long reduction of 3 Rand per litre. Do you think this is the kind of thing that the government can keep doing in perpetuity? It's almost, they're sacrificing this money now, thinking it'll be a short-term thing. What if it continues?
They actually need to stop stealing the money, run the country properly to save us a lot of billions. Look, Rob, this thing is going to be there for a long time. It's an election year. Sometimes in South Africa, when you introduce some kind of a relief program, then you're going to have problems, because this is going to continue. They're going to have to sustain it. It's an election year, like I said. It's going to be difficult to just let people take the full punch of what's coming at them.
It's bizarre because in a sense you've had all these South African own goals. You had terrible legislation, you had a government that didn't do anything, we had Eskom, we had Transnet, we couldn't ship the stuff from the ports, even when we could make it because of the power. And now you have an external crisis which is going to hurt us so much, and it's going to push inflation up. I mean, the thing is, inflation goes up, and then you have, and this isn't even our fault, then you have interest rates go up, and the economy is in a vice. I mean, how, your experience of, like you say, being in the villages and driving through there, I mean, how can people sustain this? How can they sustain this kind of level of inflation? Because it feeds through to everything.
This is very complex, Rob. I mean, even Santaco, the South African National Taxi Council, they actually had a message to all the associations to say, don't push up the petrol price now. Think about it. Make sure that you've really thought about everything, because people are like, we're just going to get an extra 10 Rand. Now remember, Santaco represents about 400,000 taxis across the country. They need to make a decision about what they are going to do, and that's going to immediately affect everybody, commuting to work and all of that. If we could fix the trains, people will have something to consider, as opposed to the taxis. But we are not fixing the trains, at least not fast enough.
That's such a good point, because in places like Australia, for example, they're now offering free public transport for this particular period because of the fact that it's become so expensive to drive your own car. So if you take public transport, it's free. Had we fixed our trains like we said we would, instead of stealing the money and bribing our way through extra-sized giant trains, we would have been in a position where we could do those kind of things to weather this, but we aren't there.
Well, trains are no options in South Africa. The railway lines are gone. People have chopped them and sent them to scrap metals. The infrastructure is just totally gone. There's no train to Mthatha, where I come from. You could easily just take a train, come to Joburg and look for work and go back. It's really tough, Rob. It's going to be tough on ordinary people. Obviously, the price of food is going to go up. your bread's going to be 25 rand, you get 2 loaves from 50 rand. Can you imagine? Can you imagine somebody who lives on a 350 rand grant, to get 2 loaves from 50 rand? It's going to be very hard.
I mean, I suppose the upside is that, Donald Trump, the terror of certainly America and now the Middle East, has said that he plans to withdraw in the next 2 weeks from Iran, even if the Strait of Hormuz issue isn't dealt with. And stocks have gone up, oil price has gone down as a consequence. But the problem is he's utterly unpredictable. And what he says isn't necessarily what happens or what he means. So the oil price goes down today. We'd like to believe that's going to be what happens, but that's not necessarily so at all, right? We can't predict how this is going to end up.
It's very unfortunate what has happened, Rob. Look, one would have thought that Donald Trump, at least his people, would have thought further than the end of their noses as far as this one is concerned. Because
a lot of people think more than the end of their noses.
They should have seen this one with the Strait of Hormuz thing. And now he says, it's not my problem. Those people are getting the oil. They must start taking responsibility for it. That's Donald Trump for you. We're interested in saying this column, the version of this column is going to be sharp, sharp. Thank you, Donald.
Moving on to something that is related to that. I mean, this announcement of the fuel price levy cut was made at President Cyril Ramaphosa's investment conference. Now, he's been having these every single year since 2019, and he's been promising these mega trillion rand investments. But it's been a lot of sophistry around it. I mean, essentially, he goes there to these conferences, he announces these massive targets, and this year he says, I want to raise 2 trillion rand by 2028. But the thing is that these targets are often collecting up and accumulating what's already been agreed to. For example, this particular year, yesterday, he said, we've raised 415 billion rand. And that included people like Sasol, who said, well, we're putting in 60 billion rand that it had already agreed to invest. I think the kind of the sheer deception around the way in which this is pictured and depicted to the public, it doesn't help the president, does it?
I think he has to keep the perception alive, the perception that South Africa is open for investment. Remember where we're coming from. We're coming from 10 years of state capture, where really the program, the entire program of South Africa was derailed and hijacked. State institutions really scooped out, SAA gone, almost sold for 2 rand, really. So he has to keep that perception going. It's if you look at tourism numbers, you have an idea that people do think that South Africa is back in business, and people are coming, millions of people are coming, the spin-offs are going to be there. You start turning around the ship, it's a big ship, you can't turn around this thing as quickly as one would have thought. We always say that this guy is slow, etc. We need to take in just the extent of the damage that was done during the Zuma years. Then you'll be able to start to appreciate that the ship is indeed turning.
That's obviously true, but equally, it's been 7 years since his first conference. It's been 7 years of complaining about state capture. Is there a point at which you say, well, state capture was another era and we just haven't done very much in the last 7 years? Is it that not just an excuse? When does the excuse wear dry?
That is probably an excuse, Rob. Look, I would agree with you, but I think it's the size of the state, Rob. It makes things difficult. I think for a country like ours, we're not a very rich country. We really need to start seriously trimming the size of the state so that we can make changes, and when we start to implement, we can implement very quickly. I think this ship is way too big.
Is it not? I mean, you look at a situation like Ramaphosa speaks to these investors. He says, come and invest here, and then they look at what's happening in the country. They see things like the government saying we're going to nationalize healthcare and essentially eradicate medical aids through national health insurance. So you see that. You see a situation where the crime is totally out of control, and you have, we had the policy researcher from the, South African Institute of International Affairs that was kidnapped and killed last week, Friday, in this country. We have that the lawyer from Sibanye-Stillwater shot in the CBD. You have these things. Isn't that the real issue why people aren't investing?
Yeah, look, first let me start with the NHI. I think with the NHI, it's the language. We need to change the language. There is a reality that there is an urgent need for universal healthcare in South Africa. There's no question about it. Millions and millions of people are locked out of quality healthcare. Our hospitals, the public hospitals, they're a nightmare. And you need to first fix that. Make serious investment in the public health infrastructure. You can't dismantle the private infrastructure, which actually works. So you can't dismantle what works and to really replace it with what doesn't work.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
going to cost us a lot of money. So it's the language. I think the language, it cannot be nationalization of private healthcare equals to universal healthcare. That cannot work like that.
I mean, a lot of the CEOs I've spoken to from large companies, they want to set up shop in South Africa, but they're not going to do it if they can't offer their employees here kind of healthcare, because there's no kind of private medical aids. So as an investor, I think it's never mind this, the signal it sends about nationalizing healthcare. I think it's a really bad thing that foreign companies can't offer their employees what they want to offer through national healthcare.
Rob, there are courts in this country. Some of the ridiculous things that politicians say actually are highly unlikely to happen. This country there's still justice to the courts in this country. I don't see NHI going the way that politicians are saying it. It sounds nice, it's good for votes and all of that, but when it comes to implementation, it's not going to go like that.
Oh, that's definitely true. I mean, you look at Tony
As for
Leon.
crime, that's a different thing altogether. Because as you can see, we don't have a minister. The minister is suspended and all of that.
So you wrote a great column about this week. I think the question is, if you want to show you're serious about crime, why do you not just fire your police minister who's implicated in corruption at the commission of inquiry you set up? And that's the question you answered in your Scrolla column. I mean, perhaps you want to elaborate on why that is, because it's a fascinating insight into the real reasons why things don't get done.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, you could look at Ramaphosa himself. You immediately say there's no way he can be associated with these kinds of characters. Even the people who are in his government, some of them implicated even in VPS scandal, the vendor bank. And you begin to feel sorry for the guy. That really, when you don't win the conference with large numbers, you end up finding yourself with all of these characters around you. Some of them are forced at you by circumstance. Look at Senzo Mchunu, for instance.
Exactly.
He used to be a nobody in KwaZulu Natal in terms of popularity and influence, etc. There were people like Dr. Zweli Mkhize, there were people like Jacob Zuma, who anchored the ANC in KwaZulu Natal. The IFP at the time was anchored by people like Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who's no longer with us, etc. So the dynamics are changing in KwaZulu Natal, especially now with Jacob Zuma gone. Now, who is going to anchor the ANC in KwaZulu Natal? Remember, Cyril's vendor, Fikile Mbalula is Xhosa. They don't have a powerful figure there, and that's where Senzo Mchunu comes in. That's where he becomes very, very important for them. If Cyril fires Senzo Mchunu, it's going to be very difficult to campaign in KwaZulu Natal. It's actually going to be booed everywhere he goes. I don't see who would be leading his campaign there in KZN without Senzo Mchunu. That's the complexity of it,
Doesn't that indicate entirely that political experience completely trumps your duty to the country?
Absolutely. Well, Cyril is on record saying that he'll try and maintain, he'll put the ANC first than the country. Isn't it a tough position? Look in the Eastern Cape. He's aligned to Oscar Mabuyane, not a very good character as well. He's in the Forte scandal, and Forte has been very ugly. Attempts on the Vice Chancellor's life, people have been arrested. Vice Chancellor's bodyguard has been killed. It's a horrible situation. Millions of money disappeared that were meant for Mama Mandela's funeral, and he's implicated in those. But also himself, he's not a powerful figure. I mean, if you understand the kind of figures that come out of the Eastern Cape, Nelson Mandela's or Tambo, the Mbekis, etc., you have never heard of Mabuyane family in ANC politics. But he's rose to the top because of being on the right slate. These days, if you're on the right slate, you're going to make it. It doesn't really matter what you bring. You're just going to make it.
Can we just kind of transfer laterally, because there was a fascinating poll that came out from the Social Research Foundation, Franz Cronier's guys this week, and they talked about the ANC, and they asked ANC voters specifically, who would you prefer to lead the ANC? And I find it fascinating because 47% of them said Patrice Motsepe, 19% said Fikile Mbalula, and just 16% said the incumbents, essentially Paul Mashatile, the deputy president. I mean, that's fascinating to me, because firstly, it shows you that the bench strength in the ANC, the people that they're groomed to take over, people don't want them. And secondly, Patrice is nowhere. He's not in the leadership structures. I mean, surely that's almost impossible.
Yeah, the leadership structure it's rotten. Everyone can see, Rob. In Xhosa they call them amamenemene, which means liars. But it's beyond liars. It's like unrepentant liars. When they call you imenemene, you are beyond reproach in Xhosa. So that tells you, and again, for that term to come from the Eastern Cape, the very heart of the ANC, that really makes indication. Look, Paul Mashatile is going to have a very, very tough time if he thinks he's going to be president. You know, you can hardly make it if you don't have the Eastern Cape and you don't have KZN. Even if you have Gauteng, at conference level, Gauteng has never elected a president on its own without these two provinces. So that's going to be his problem. And it's starting to look like Patrice Motsepe, his candidacy comes from the Eastern Cape, is backed by the Eastern Cape, and that's the province that backed Ramaphosa to the top. It's highly likely that the Eastern Cape will once again be the province that elects the president. So Paul Mashatile, if Motsepe successfully comes through, I don't see him making it.
Motsepe says he's, this PM27 campaign that's grown up, it's not his, he's not really doing this right now, and that's not really him, but it could just be the sort of things you say because you're not allowed to publicly campaign before you campaign. But the thing is, for Mashatile, it's really fascinating because you've had ANC deputy presidents who pretty much all are elevated to the top position, with the exception of Didi Mabuza, who died. But essentially, you have this kind of impression of incumbency. You have to become the top leader, and if you don't, think of the fight with Jacob Zuma. It becomes almost existential for the ANC. I mean, how serious a war could this get within the ANC if Mashatile is bypassed?
If Mashatile had a powerful province behind him, remember, even Gauteng,
Zuma had KZN.
Gauteng boys are almost Ramaphosa's people, So if Paul Mashatile had a powerful province behind him, then he could really do a lot of damage, a lot of sort of disunity in the ANC. Look at what Didi Mabuza could have done with one province. If you remember that conference, the conference deadlocked, and Didi Mabuza took all his numbers and went to the other side and was able to change the face of the conference in favor of Ramaphosa and of course the country. Well, unfortunately, we have to say thank you very much to Didi Mabuza for ending state capture. Yeah, but Paul Mashatile does not have those kinds of numbers. It doesn't have Limpopo, it doesn't have Mpumalanga, it doesn't have KZN, Eastern Cape. He's nowhere. So he's not somebody who can do a lot of damage even if he loses conference. I wouldn't worry much about him. Obviously, the issue of Patrice Motsepe, that's an interesting one. I don't think he's going to show his hand until he's guaranteed. Somebody like Patrice Motsepe would not want to contest. He would want to be asked by the party that this is where we are, it's guaranteed, come in. I don't see him taking a contest and risking losing it and what it could do to his image. I don't see him going there. Otherwise, I can tell you on the record that his campaign, his lobbyists are actually very, very active. They've gone to different regions in the Eastern Cape. Meetings have been held. This is not a speculation. It's actually happening.
I mean, and what would be the appeal for ANC voters, ANC, members of electing someone like Patrice Motsepe? Is it that he comes from business, he has that kind of degree of the veneer of respectability from business, he's in the Ramaphosa tradition? Is he not seen as too much of an elite to actually lead the ANC? Would there not be a massive backlash within the party were he to be chosen?
I think now even from ordinary people it's starting to look real that the country's president needs to be somebody who can represent the country internationally and everywhere in between. People are starting to realize that the money, the investment is going to come from outside. You don't have to be very educated to see that. And somebody like Patrice Motsepe, who is respected in business and everywhere, people have seen Patrice Motsepe in the same rooms, in the same boardrooms with Donald Trump. And people are saying that when you went to see Donald Trump, why didn't you have this guy? Because he knows those American businesses, so ordinary people can see that. Apart from his record in terms of administratively, you can imagine the backing he's going to have in the mining sector, being a major player in that particular sector. Even with the unions, he could address some of the shifts that are happening in the ANC, between the ANC and the union, to have this guy like this. It could bring entirely COSATU back behind him. There is a lot that can be achieved with Patrice Motsepe.
Is he not? I mean, is he seen as significantly strong enough? I mean, I've seen him in the boardroom and as the head of African Rainbow Minerals, and sometimes I wonder if he has the kind of strength and leadership to kind of carry off such a big role. He was asked once about the mining environment and nationalisation, if that was a good thing. He said, well, we'll have to see what people want. As opposed to saying, well, I'm leading this company and we think that we're in the business environment, we don't think nationalisation will work, which is entirely what you would say if you're the head of a mining company. And he equivocated on that, which made me think he might try and play the politician and the diplomat rather than taking the bull by the horns, which is kind of what you need to do in the country right now, right?
Not always. Not always. Sometimes when you stir the water too much, you could end up having problems. I have found him to be a combination of a politician and a diplomat, as you say. I don't expect him to just go out and do all sorts of amazing things, but he's better than the other options that we have.
Oh no, absolutely, and that's exactly what the poll said. Patrice Motsepe versus Paul Mashatile or Fikile Mbalula. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer.
Talking of stirring the water, perhaps we should discuss another feature of that SRF poll, which was that they asked people in Joburg, who would you elect to lead Joburg? And I think Helen Zille came out at 39%. Of Joburg, and she spent the past week swimming in a gigantic pothole in Douglasdale in Randburg. After which, they sent Dada Morero, the current mayor of Joburg, sent a team to fix that pothole within a day.
Within a day.
And Dada Morero was saying, well, he thought that he was taking Helen Zille down by posting a video saying it's very unsafe for her to be swimming in these things. People can get hurt in potholes like this. Dada Morero, if this has been there for 3 years, you haven't fixed it, and you knew how dangerous it was, why did you do nothing for 3 years? I think it utterly backfired on him. It made him look incompetent. I think this kind of only works to Helen Zille. It's been a fantastic marketing ploy, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think Helen Zille has changed her strategy from talking to doing and showing people and of course swimming. The videos are quite interesting. Literally every week they're quite interesting. She's just standing in a corner and she says, I'm on this corner. You look at the pavement, it's destroyed. Everything is just dirty. There's water flowing all over the place. The traffic light doesn't work. Just in that particular street corner, nothing works at all. And she's exposing those. I think she needs to talk less. Sometimes she tends to talk herself into trouble. There is a tone deafness that sometimes accompanies the DA. I think she needs to be smarter than we have seen in the past. In the Cape, they call her Nonsapo. They gave her a closer name. Nonsapo means one who protects Usapo, the family. It's normally given to somebody who's motherly. It's a very affectionate kind of name that they've given her in Xhosaland. She needs to start to bring that out as well, because that's what you expect from someone like that who's going to save Johannesburg. She needs to understand the needs of ordinary people. She needs to appear not to be so sentient, but more ordinary, and she's doing a good job so far. Well,
if you're willing to risk E. coli and cholera to swim in a gigantic open hole, and maybe you are doing that. Is it? I mean, supposing she does get 39% or 40% at this particular point, I mean, who does she partner with? I mean, the ANC seems to be the preferred option for people who are polled, the ANC and the DA, but it seems unlikely. Action SA is another one, but Herman Mashaba and Helen Zille are like oil and stormwater at this point. They're not going to really mix too much.
Yeah, in Joburg, I wouldn't advise her to partner with the ANC. If she does, a lot of her voters will be very unhappy. You know, already now with the GNU, people are saying that the DA is saving the ANC. You know, we're not seeing much results and all of that. We're not going to see results as quickly as one would have expected. But there are results. You can see that the DA is there. There are some changes, etc. I think the next round of the GNU, it's going to be even better. But in Joburg, I wouldn't advise them to partner with the ANC. Even if you look at the ANC candidates, for instance, they are not very good at all.
Dada Morero is an example.
One of them is Dada Morero,
exactly.
But he lost the recent conference, the regional conference of Johannesburg, which means Masuku could be the potential candidate. Masuku is the wife of Dr. Masuku, the previous health minister, MEC in Gauteng. Together they were involved in that COVID, very ugly COVID tender premiers scandal, etc. How they rose to the top, heaven knows. You know, like I said, the ANC does not have very good candidates. Even recently, President indicated that the ANC is going to have a credible candidate. That suggests that they're going to look outside of these two. Somebody credible. I don't know who. Probably a former premier. I don't know.
It's fascinating because Zille's campaign is entirely centered on, not discussing ideology, but just fixing stuff and demonstrating what is there to be fixed. The swim in this gigantic pot is an example. But I mean, I suppose, I think Adam Habib, the former chancellor of Wits University, was saying on social media this week that, the ANC is busy changing street names and worrying about can you change a street name 30 years after democracy, and you should have done it in your first couple of weeks. And the DA, by contrast, is saying, let's fix this. So that's entirely what the DA is going to use as its marketing. We're going to be the guys who fix it. Even if you don't like us, you don't like our ideology, we're too astringent and we have low EQ, we can get stuff done. I mean, that's primarily how it's coalescing, right?
I think at local government, that's really what you need. That is all you need. People worry about the change at national. As long as the ANC is still there, it's still the people's government, etc. But at local government, you really want things to be done. You want things to be fixed. You worry about the value of your property. If the shanty towns come very close to where you've invested, obviously that's your money gone. The DA fixes things. No one really cares about ideology. They want things fixed. I mean, forget about the Western Cape. Just drive to KZN, where Chris Pappas is running his little town in the middle of Zululand. I mean, with Zulu votes, etc. That town has been there, run by the ANC, etc. He's come in, cleaned it up. You must drive there. The street lights are on. In the Eastern Cape, you can hardly see a town with street lights that are on. I was very impressed with what I saw. So again, that's the DA difference. I think they need to stick with that, show people what can be done, and the votes will come.
Great. Well, I think that's all for our first edition of Sharp. Join us next week. It's been fantastic to chat, Zooks, and I think the message to anyone listening is go out and find the potholes to swim in the next week and speak to us next week.
Thanks, Rob.